The chrome elevator dinged softly as it ascended to the penthouse floor of Sunset Heights. I adjusted my simple pearl earrings, the same ones I wore when signing the acquisition papers for this property 6 months ago. The security guard gave me a puzzled look as I stepped out, clearly wondering what a woman in modest jeans and a casual blazer was doing in Manhattan's most exclusive residential tower. "Ma'am, this floor is private access only," he started to say. I smiled. "I'm here for the housewarming. Amanda Williams invited me." He checked his tablet, eyebrows rising. "Oh, you're David's ex-wife." "That would be me." The guard's uncomfortable expression told me everything about how Amanda had likely described me when submitting the guest list. I could have mentioned that I'd personally approved his recent raise. But where's the fun in that? Amanda's voice carried through the open penthouse door, crystal clear and dripping with manufactured charm. "And this is our private terrace, darling. The views are simply impossible to get anywhere else in the city." I followed the sound of expensive heels clicking on marble floors. The penthouse had been beautifully renovated. I should know, I'd signed off on the $2 million upgrade myself, though the current tenants had no idea who really owned the building. "Oh," Amanda's perfect smile froze when she saw me. "You actually came." She stood surrounded by 4 women who could have stepped out of a luxury magazine, all of them clutching champagne flutes and wearing expressions of carefully curated superiority. My ex-husband David was nowhere in sight, probably still at the office, where he'd been spending most of his time lately, according to my sources. I brought wine. I held up the bottle, not the cheap stuff they probably expected, but a vintage from my private collection that cost more than Amanda's monthly lease. How thoughtful. Amanda took the bottle with 2 fingers, like it might bite. "We were just finishing the tour, though I'm sure it's quite different from what you're used to." One of her friends, a redhead wearing enough diamonds to fund a small country, tittered. "Amanda told us you live in one of those adorable little townhouses in Brooklyn." "Queens, actually," I corrected mildly. "Would you like to see pictures?" Amanda's eyes lit up with malicious glee. "Oh yes, ladies, you must see Sarah's. Charming little place. Show them." I pulled up photos of my modestly furnished townhouse on my phone. It was comfortable, clean, and deliberately understated. Nothing like the marble and crystal fortress we were standing in. "Oh my," another woman peered at the screen. "Is that IKEA furniture? And those curtains?" Amanda couldn't contain her smirk. "Did you make them yourself?" "I did," I said proudly. "Just like I make my own coffee every morning instead of having it delivered." "Well," Amanda handed my phone back like it was contaminated. "We can't all live like this. Some of us have standards to maintain." Speaking of standards, one of her friends chimed in. "Amanda was just telling us about the exclusive residence committee she's joining. Only the most qualified people are invited." I bit back a smile, remembering the committee application I'd rejected just that morning. How fascinating. "Tell me more about that." Amanda preened. "Well, it's very exclusive. We'll be making all the important decisions about building improvements, resident selection, that sort of thing. Not that you'd understand property management. If she only knew how many properties I managed. Though I must ask," I said innocently, "isn't the committee application deadline today? I hadn't heard about any approvals yet." Amanda's smile flickered. "Well, it's practically a done deal. Everyone knows the owner only approves the most elite residents for the committee. And since we have the penthouse—" "The owner?" I raised an eyebrow. "You've met them." "Well, no," Amanda admitted. "Some investment group owns it, but my real estate agent assured me they only deal with the very best people." One of her friends wandered over to the wine I brought, eyes widening as she read the label. "Amanda, this is a 1982 Lafayette Rothschild. It's worth thousands." Amanda's perfect composure cracked slightly. "That's impossible. She lives in Queens." "In my simple townhouse," I agreed, "with my IKEA furniture and homemade curtains. Would you like me to open it? I have several cases in my cellar." The atmosphere in the room shifted subtly. Amanda's friends exchanged glances, their certainty about exactly who and what I was beginning to waver. "David told me you got almost nothing in the divorce," Amanda said sharply. "That you could barely afford a lawyer." "Did he?" I sipped my champagne. "How interesting. Did he also tell you about the mysterious investor who bought out his company's debt last year? The one who's been quietly acquiring properties all over the city?" Amanda's face paled slightly. What are you talking about? Before I could answer, her phone chimed. She glanced at it, and the color drained completely from her face. This must be a mistake, she whispered. What is it, darling? One of her friends asked. My committee application. Amanda's voice shook. It's been denied. But that's impossible. They said. They said the owner found my references unsatisfactory. References are so important, I mused. Almost as important as paying your lease on time. You are planning to pay on time this month, aren't you? Amanda's perfectly manicured hand trembled as she set down her phone. How did you know about the late payment warnings? The bounce check last month? The way you've been borrowing from your friends to maintain this lifestyle? I smiled serenely. Let's just say I take a very active interest in property management. The pieces were starting to fall into place behind her eyes. No, she whispered. No, that's impossible. I set down my champagne glass and pulled out my phone, quickly typing a message to the building manager. Seconds later, Amanda's phone chimed again. Her friends huddled around as she read the message aloud. Dear Mrs. Williams, this is a courtesy reminder that all resident concerns should be directed to building management, not to other tenants. Regards, Thomas Williams, property manager, on behalf of SK Holdings. SK Holdings, I said softly. Sarah Kennedy Holdings, but you can just call me Sarah, or David's ex-wife who lives in Queens. I answered to both. The silence that followed was absolutely perfect. Amanda's friends suddenly found urgent reasons to leave, their designer heels clicking rapidly across the marble floors. Within minutes, the penthouse was empty except for Amanda, who stood frozen by the floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the city skyline, my city skyline. How? She finally managed, her perfectly glossed lips trembling. David said you were nothing, just a housewife who got lucky with a small settlement. I settled onto her imported Italian leather sofa, amused by how quickly she'd forgotten to act superior about my presence on her furniture. David says a lot of things, like how he built his company from scratch. Funny how he never mentioned the angel investor who provided his startup capital 15 years ago. That was you. Through a shell corporation, I confirmed. One of many. I was already successful when I met David, but I kept it quiet. I wanted someone who loved me for myself, not my bank account. I laughed softly. Ironic, isn't it? Amanda sank into the chair opposite me, her designer dress wrinkling. The company's debt last year, when everything almost collapsed. David made some risky investments, I said. He was about to lose everything, including this lifestyle you're so proud of. So I bought the debt through another corporation. He has no idea his ex-wife saved his company. Why? Her voice cracked. Why would you help him after he left me for you? I raised an eyebrow. Because contrary to what you believe, Amanda, success isn't about crushing people. It's about knowing when to show mercy and when not to. Her phone chimed again. She checked it, her face growing even paler. The lease renewal terms, she whispered. They've doubled. Market rates, I said mildly. This is a premium property after all, as you're so fond of reminding everyone. We can't afford this. Panic crept into her voice. David's company is still recovering and my shopping. She cut herself off, but not before I caught the admission. Your shopping habits? Yes, I know all about those. The credit card debt, the secret accounts, the loans from friends. Did you think no one would notice? Tears threatened to ruin her perfect makeup. Please, you can't do this. This address, this lifestyle. It's everything. Everything? I stood up, walking to the windows. You know, when I bought this building, I came to inspect it first. I wore jeans and a t-shirt. Your doorman wouldn't let me in. Said this building was for quality people only. I'll speak to him, Amanda said quickly. I'll make sure everyone knows to respect you. Missing the point again, I sighed. I don't care about being respected because of my money. I care about basic human decency, something you and David seem to have forgotten exists. What do you want? She whispered. Name your price. I turned to face her. What I want is for you to remember this moment. Every time you're tempted to judge someone by their clothes, their address, their job, remember that the woman you mocked might own everything you hold dear. Amanda's shoulders slumped. Are you going to evict us? That depends, I picked up my bag, on whether you're capable of learning from this. The lease renewal isn't just about money, Amanda. It's about character. Show me you have some, and we can talk. How? Start with the resident committee you were so excited about, the one that only accepts elite members. I'm dissolving it. Instead, I'm starting a community outreach program. All residents will be required to volunteer monthly at local shelters and community centers. Required? She looked horrified. Consider it a condition of your lease, I smiled. Oh, and those designer charity galas you love hosting? From now on, an equal amount of whatever is spent on the event must be donated to actual charities. No more writing off your parties as tax deductions without real contributions. The elevator dinged and David's voice carried down the hallway. Amanda? Why are all these messages about lease renewals? He stopped dead in the doorway when he saw me. Sarah? His face went through a remarkable series of expressions. What are you doing here? Just having a chat with your wife about property management, I said cheerfully. She's learning quite a lot about responsible homeownership. Property management? He looked between us, confusion evident. What's going on? Your ex-wife, Amanda said quietly, owns Sunset Heights, and apparently most of the city. David's briefcase hit the floor with a thud. That's impossible. The owner is SK Holdings, I finished. Remember that mystery investor who saved your company last year, the one you told the board was a business genius? Hello, darling. I walked to the door, pausing beside my shell-shocked ex-husband. Oh, and David. The board meeting next week. Don't be late. I hate when my subsidiaries run behind schedule. As I waited for the elevator, I heard Amanda's voice, small and uncertain. What are we going to do? Learn, I called back, stepping into the elevator. Or start apartment hunting in Queens. I hear it's quite charming this time of year. The doors closed on their stunned faces and I smiled. Sometimes the best revenge isn't taking everything from people. It's teaching them the value of what they never appreciated in the first place. 6 months later, I sat in my favorite coffee shop in Queens, enjoying my morning routine of homemade muffins and watching people hurry past the window. My phone buzzed with a message from my building manager. Mrs. Kennedy, thought you'd want to know. Mrs. Williams spent 3 hours at the homeless shelter yesterday. Served meals, helped organize the donation closet. No complaints, no photographers, no social media posts. I smiled into my coffee cup. The transformation hadn't been immediate, of course. The first month after my revelation, Amanda had tried to rally the other residents against the new community service requirements. When that failed, she attempted to find loopholes, even sending her housekeeper to volunteer in her place. But something changed after her first visit to the shelter. Maybe it was the single mother who reminded her of herself before David. Maybe it was the elderly veteran who shared stories of his own fall from fortune. Whatever it was, she started showing up without prompting. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email from David. Quarterly reports attached. Companies up 15% since implementing the employee benefit program you suggested. The daycare center for staff is at full capacity. You were right. Happy employees make better profits. Who knew? I archived the email without responding. David had learned to run his company ethically, or at least he was learning. That was enough. The bell above the coffee shop door chimed, and I looked up to see Amanda walking in. Gone were the designer labels and excessive jewelry. She wore simple slacks and a sweater, her hair pulled back naturally. Mind if I join you? She asked, gesturing to the empty chair at my table. I nodded, curious. This was the first time she'd sought me out directly since the revelation. I sold my designer collection, she said without preamble, sitting down. All of it. The handbags, the shoes, the dresses I wore once and forgot about. Oh? The money paid off my credit cards, she continued, and there was enough left over to fund a job training program at the shelter for the women trying to get back on their feet. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or a hidden agenda. I found none. That must have been difficult for you, I said carefully. Less than I thought it would be, she admitted. It's funny. I spent years trying to prove I was worth something by showing off what I owned. Now I'm learning what it means to actually be worth something. The waiter brought her coffee in one of the shop's chipped mugs. She didn't flinch or ask for a different cup. David and I are in counseling, she said after a moment, separately and together. We're learning a lot about ourselves, about why we needed to make others feel small to feel big. And how's that going? It's hard, really hard, but necessary. She took a sip of coffee. The lease renewal is coming up next month. It is. We'd like to stay, she said quietly, not because of the address or the status anymore, but because I think we still have a lot to learn. And this community you've built, the one we used to mock, it's teaching us something valuable. I pulled out my tablet, bringing up the lease agreement I drafted that morning. The rent's going up again. She nodded, unsurprised. We can afford it now. We've been living more modestly, saving instead of showing off. There's also a new clause. I turned the tablet toward her. All residents must participate in monthly financial literacy workshops at the community center, teaching others what they've learned about responsible money management. Amanda read the clause, then looked up with the ghost of a smile. You never stop teaching lessons, do you? Life never stops teaching lessons, I corrected. I'm just passing them along. She signed the lease, then stood to leave. At the door, she paused. Thank you, she said softly. Not for letting us stay, but for showing us a better way to live. I watched her walk away, noticing how she stopped to help an elderly woman cross the street. No cameras, no audience, no performance. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's about helping them destroy the worst parts of themselves. I finished my coffee and headed home to my simple townhouse, where my handmade curtains lit in the morning sun, and my IKEA furniture held more comfort than any designer piece ever could. Success isn't about what you own, it's about owning who you are. The sound of the slap echoed through the beautifully decorated ballroom, silencing the string quartet and freezing every guest in place. My daughter Sophie stood there, her hand touching her reddening cheek, tears welling in her emerald eyes that matched mine. How dare you? Miranda seethed, her designer bracelet jingling as she lowered her hand. Inviting my social circle to this budget celebration. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? I moved through the crowd like a silent storm. The $50,000 I'd spent on this party was hardly budget, but Miranda didn't need to know that. Just like she didn't need to know that the simple event planner she'd been sneering at for the past hour was actually me, the silent owner of the city's most prestigious venues, including this one. Get your hands off my daughter, I said quietly, my voice carrying across the stunned silence. Miranda whirled around, her perfectly styled hair swishing with the movement. Oh, look who it is. The yoga teacher who thinks she can play in the big leagues. She gestured dramatically at the gathered crowd. These are my friends, my connections. The governor's wife, the CEO of Summit Industries, the entire board of Metropolitan Arts. They're here because of me. Sophie looked at me, understanding dawning in her eyes. I gave her the smallest nod, and she stepped back, a slight smile playing on her lips despite her red cheek. Actually, Miranda, I said, maintaining my calm. Why don't we ask them who invited whom? I raised my hand and the string quartet resumed playing. Margaret, the governor's wife, stepped forward first. Really, Miranda? I'm here because Sarah sits on the board of my children's foundation. She's our largest anonymous donor. Miranda's perfectly lined lips parted in shock. But you always attend my charity galas. Out of political necessity, Margaret said coolly. Sarah's the one who actually gets things done. Before Miranda could respond, James Chen, CEO of Summit Industries, approached. Sarah, that merger you advised me on last month increased our market value by 30%. Brilliant strategy. Merger? Miranda's voice rose an octave. But you've been my client for years. I buy art through your gallery occasionally, James shrugged. I trust Sarah with the real investments. One by one, Miranda's supposed connections revealed their true ties to me. The museum board members who knew me as their chief endowment manager. The society ladies who sought my quiet counsel on their family trusts. The business leaders who relied on my strategic insights. Miranda's face grew paler with each revelation. This is impossible. You teach yoga at the country club. I own the country club, I said softly. Teaching yoga is my passion, not my profession. Though I'm surprised you never wondered how a yoga teacher could afford the membership. Dad, Sophie called out. Are you going to let her get away with slapping me? My ex-husband, David, finally broke free from his shocked stupor. Miranda, what were you thinking? She's 16. Miranda's eyes darted around the room, finally noticing the subtle security cameras. You can't prove anything. Actually, I pressed a button on my phone, and the ballroom screens lit up with multiple angles of the slap. I can prove everything. including your behavior at last month's board meeting when you tried to take credit for the Children's Hospital initiative. The hospital. Miranda swayed slightly. That was you too. The anonymous benefactor who donated the new wing? I smiled. Yes. Just like I'm the silent owner of that art gallery you manage. The one you've been embezzling from for the past year. The crystal champagne glass slipped from her manicured fingers, shattering on the marble floor. You can't, you wouldn't. Mom, Sophie touched my arm. Remember what you always say about power. I looked at my beautiful daughter, so poised despite the handprint still visible on her cheek. That true power isn't in destroying others. It's in letting them destroy themselves, Sophie finished. I turned back to Miranda. The audit team arrives Monday. I suggest you spend tomorrow getting your affairs in order. David, Miranda clutched at my ex-husband's sleeve. Do something. But David was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. All these years, you let me think. You never asked, I said simply. You assumed, just like Miranda did, that a woman who finds joy in teaching yoga couldn't possibly be anything more. The string quartet shifted to a new song, Sophie's favorite. Now, I addressed the room. I believe we're here to celebrate my daughter's sweet 16. And Miranda. I met her terrified gaze. You're no longer on the guest list. As security quietly escorted Miranda out, Sophie hugged me tight. Best birthday ever, Mom. Really? Even with? I touched her cheek gently. Are you kidding? She grinned, watching her face as everyone revealed who you really are. Worth every second. Though I do have one question. What's that, baby? Can we have the chocolate cake now? I laughed, signaling the waiters to bring out the elaborate cake I had specially made. Of course. After all, I raised my voice so Miranda, still visible through the glass doors, could hear. Some things really are priceless. The Monday morning after Sophie's party dawned bright and clear. I sat in my private office at the gallery's corporate headquarters, watching Miranda pace nervously in the waiting room through one-way glass. She traded her usual designer dress for a conservative business suit, clearly trying to project professionalism for the audit team. Mrs. Kennedy, my assistant's voice came through the intercom. The forensic accountants are ready. Send them in first, I replied, gathering the files I'd been collecting for months, evidence of every questionable transaction, every manipulated sales record, every artificial inflation of commission fees. The audit team filed in, 3 stern-faced professionals I'd hired from the city's top firm. As I briefed them, I noticed David had arrived, hovering uncertainly near Miranda in the waiting room. Bring them both in, I instructed my assistant. Miranda entered first, her fake confidence crumbling when she saw the stack of documents on my desk. David followed, looking like he aged years over the weekend. Please sit. I gestured to the chairs. Miranda, I believe you recognize these statements. She leaned forward, her face paling as she saw her own signature on various suspicious transfers. I can explain. The $50,000 client acquisition fee that went to your personal account. I slid one document forward. Or perhaps the mysterious art pieces that were damaged in transit, but somehow ended up in your private collection. Those were legitimate business expenses. She turned to David. Tell her. But David was staring at the numbers with growing horror. Miranda, these dates. These match the deposits you said were from your family trust. Oh? I raised an eyebrow. The trust that supposedly funded your luxury car. The one that actually came from manipulated commission structures. Miranda's perfectly manicured hands began to tremble. I had expenses to maintain. The lifestyle, the connections. The lifestyle you mocked me for not having. I interrupted softly. The connections you claimed were yours but actually came through my network. Sarah, David spoke up, did you know about this when we were married? I knew you had a weakness for women who displayed wealth, I replied evenly. I chose not to compete in that arena. I wanted to be loved for who I am, not what I own. Miranda let out a bitter laugh. And look how well that worked out for you. Did it? I pressed another button on my desk, and the office screens lit up with security footage from the party. Let's review Saturday night, shall we? You assaulted a minor, in front of witnesses, on camera. I lost my temper, she whispered. The party was supposed to be embarrassing, not this. Not what? I leaned forward. Not a revelation that the woman you've been mocking actually owns your entire world? That must have been quite a shock. David ran his hands through his graying hair. All these years you've been, what exactly? A businesswoman who enjoys teaching yoga, I said simply. A mother who wanted her daughter to value character over status. And now, I turned back to Miranda. Someone who has to decide what to do with an employee who committed fraud. Please, Miranda's voice cracked. I'll pay it back. I'll do anything. I slid a final document across the desk. You have two choices. Option 1. We press charges for both the embezzlement and the assault. Option 2. You resign immediately, repay every penny within 90 days, and agree to mandatory counseling. 90 days, she gasped. That's impossible. The car payments alone. Sell the car, David cut in. Sell everything you bought with stolen money. Miranda stared at him. But your status, your image. My daughter's face still shows your handprint, he said coldly. I think I'm done with image. I watched as Miranda's carefully constructed world crumbled around her. The counseling requirement is non-negotiable, I added. You need to understand why you value appearances over integrity. With shaking fingers, she signed the resignation agreement. As the audit team began their official review, she looked up at me with tears in her mascara. Why didn't you expose me sooner? You must have known for months. Because Sophie needed to see something important, I replied. That power isn't in destroying others. It's in choosing when to show mercy. Mercy? She laughed bitterly. You're taking everything. No, Miranda. I'm taking back what you stole. There's a difference. After she left with the audit team, David remained behind. I've been a fool, he said quietly. Yes, I agreed. But that's not why I did this. Then why? Because our daughter needed to see that real strength isn't in designer labels or social status. It's in knowing your worth regardless of what others think. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. Mom, is it done? I typed back. Justice doesn't always wear designer labels. Sometimes it wears truth. Sarah, David hesitated. Could we maybe? No, I cut him off gently. Some choices can't be undone. But you can choose to be a better father moving forward. He nodded slowly. And Miranda. We'll learn that true value isn't in what you own. I gathered my files. It's in Ami who you are. As David left, I looked out over the city skyline. Somewhere out there, Miranda was facing her new reality. And Sophie was learning that sometimes the best revenge isn't in striking back. It's in standing tall and letting truth do the work. 6 months later, I sat in my favorite local coffee shop, watching Sophie do her homework. The bruise from Miranda's slap had long faded, but the lessons from that night had left permanent marks. The good kind. Mom, Sophie looked up from her economics textbook. You'll never guess who I saw today. Miranda. She was working at that small art gallery in the suburbs. You know, the one that showcases local artists. I sipped my coffee, hiding my smile. I'd bought that gallery 3 weeks ago, instructing the manager to give Miranda an entry-level position if she applied. Sometimes the path to redemption starts at the bottom. How did she look? I asked. Different, Sophie considered. No designer clothes, no fancy jewelry, but maybe better. She was actually talking to customers about the art, not just the prices. My phone buzzed with a message from the gallery manager. Mrs. Reynolds completed her first month. Actually shows genuine interest in emerging artists. Recommended a local painter we're now featuring. Mom, Sophie closed her book. Do you think she's changed? People can change, I said carefully, when they're ready to do the work. The coffee shop door chimed and David walked in. Since the party, he'd started having weekly coffee dates with Sophie. No Miranda, no pretense, just a father trying to rebuild trust with his daughter. Hey kiddo, he kissed Sophie's forehead. Sarah, do you mind if I join for a minute? I gestured to the empty chair. David looked different too, less concerned with his image, more present in the moment. I signed the divorce papers, he said quietly. Miranda didn't contest anything. Sophie squeezed his hand. Are you okay, Dad? Yeah, actually. It's like waking up from someone else's dream. He turned to me. You knew, didn't you? All those years ago, you knew I was choosing the wrong things to value. We all have to learn our own lessons, I replied, sometimes the hard way. Speaking of lessons, Sophie grinned. Guess who got accepted to the business program? What? David's face lit up. That's fantastic. Mom's been tutoring me in economics. Turns out I have a knack for it. I watched my daughter's eyes shine with genuine pride, not in designer labels or social status, but in her own achievements. The same pride I'd seen in Miranda's eyes last week when her first gallery showcase of local artists had sold out. The gallery manager says Miranda's doing well, I mentioned casually. David nodded. She's in therapy twice a week, learning to separate her worth from her wealth. Like father, like ex-wife. Sophie teased gently. Like all of us, he acknowledged, learning what really matters. My phone buzzed again. Another message from the gallery. Mrs. Reynolds suggested a youth art program for underprivileged kids. Should we implement? I typed back, yes. Let her run it. Sometimes the best revenge isn't in punishment, it's in providing the opportunity for change. Mom? Sophie's voice pulled me back. Thank you. For what, baby? For teaching me that power isn't about having control over others. It's about having control over yourself. I looked at my daughter, strong, compassionate, wise beyond her years. At David, finally becoming the father she deserved. And through the window, I caught a glimpse of Miranda walking past, carrying art supplies, a genuine smile on her face as she talked to a young street artist. We all have power. The real victory lies in how we choose to use it. So David stood up, ready for our coffee date, kiddo. Sophie gathered her books. Can we stop by Miranda's gallery? I heard she's featuring that artist I like. Of course, he smiled. Maybe we can all learn something new. As they left, I ordered another coffee, watching the world move forward. Sometimes the greatest power isn't in the empire you build, but in the lives you change, including your own. The crystal glasses clinked as waitstaff circulated through the elegant university courtyard, serving champagne to celebrate my daughter Emma's summa cum laude graduation. String lights twinkled overhead, casting a warm glow over the gathering of professors, students, and family members who had come to celebrate. Mom, this is perfect, Emma whispered, squeezing my hand. Her graduation cord gleamed against her black robe, a testament to 4 years of dedication. I smiled, remembering all the late nights studying, the tears, the triumphs. You earned every bit of this, sweetheart. Well, 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 Ika isn't the pretender and her precious princess. The sharp voice cut through the gentle evening ambience like a knife. Victoria, my ex-husband's wife of 3 years, stood at the courtyard entrance, her designer dress practically screaming for attention. Behind her, my ex-husband Robert shifted uncomfortably, already sensing the impending disaster. Victoria, I acknowledged calmly. The invitation said 7 p.m. You're an hour early. Oh, I couldn't wait to share something special with all your guests, she said, strutting forward and pulling an envelope from her designer clutch, especially with the university board members present. Emma's grip on my hand tightened. Mom? It's okay, I murmured, watching Victoria approach the small stage where the string quartet was playing. Ladies and gentlemen, Victoria's voice rang out, causing conversations to halt. I have a wonderful story to share about our hostess, Catherine Mitchell. The quartet stopped playing. Robert finally found his voice. Victoria dumped. You see, she continued, pulling photos from the envelope. While dear Catherine plays at being successful enough to host this lavish party, I thought everyone should know the truth. She held up the first photo triumphantly. This was her 10 years ago, waiting tables at Riley's Diner downtown. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I remained still, my face neutral. Mom worked hard to put me through school, Emma said loudly. I'm proud of that. Oh, sweetie, Victoria's voice dripped with false sympathy. Is that what she told you? That she worked hard? She pulled out more photos. She worked hard, all right. Hard at catching a rich man. Isn't that right, Robert? My ex-husband stepped forward. That's enough. No, let her continue, I said softly, causing Victoria to pause. Something in my tone made her falter briefly before she plowed ahead. Look at her now, pretending she belongs here among educated people, successful people, hosting parties at the university like she's somebody. Victoria laughed sharply. Tell them, Catherine. Tell them how you could possibly afford this on your business consultant salary. The university president, Dr. Harrison, stood up from his seat. Mrs. Mitchell, should I? I gave him a slight nod. Actually, Dr. Harrison's authoritative voice filled the courtyard. I was going to save this announcement for later, but now seems appropriate. We're here not only to celebrate Emma Mitchell's outstanding academic achievement, but also to acknowledge her mother's extraordinary contribution to our institution. Victoria's smirk began to waver. Catherine Mitchell isn't just a business consultant, Dr. Harrison continued. She's the CEO and majority owner of Mitchell Global Enterprises, which recently acquired Riverside Corporate Holdings. The color drained from Victoria's face. Riverside was where she worked as a senior vice president. Additionally, Dr. Harrison smiled. Those photos you're holding. Riley's Diner is now Riley's Restaurant Group, a subsidiary of Mitchell Global. In fact, Mrs. Mitchell owns the entire downtown restaurant district. That's impossible, Victoria stammered. I would know if. Would you? I finally spoke, my voice carrying across the now silent courtyard. Just like you knew who bought out Riverside last month. Tell me, how was the emergency board meeting this morning? Victoria's hands began to shake, the photos slipping from her grasp. The restructuring announcement, that was you. Mom? Emma looked at me with wide eyes. Is that why you couldn't make it to my morning graduation ceremony? I'm sorry, sweetheart. I had to attend the board meeting to finalize some decisions. I turned back to Victoria, including whether to maintain current management positions. Robert stepped forward. Catherine, I had no idea she was planning this. Of course you didn't, I said quietly. You never did pay attention to what was happening right in front of you. Victoria's designer clutch hit the ground. Please, my position at Riverside. I have expenses, the house payments. The house payments on the mansion you mock me for not having. I raised an eyebrow. The one you reminded Emma was so much grander than our modest home. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. I walked over and picked up one of the fallen photos. You meant to humiliate me by showing everyone my waitressing days. Instead, you've shown them the beginning of my journey. I held up the photo. See this diner? It's where I learned about business, customer service, and most importantly, humility. Something you might want to consider as you update your resume. The string quartet resumed playing softly as Victoria stood frozen, the reality of her situation sinking in. Robert looked between us, finally seeing what he failed to notice for years. The board meeting tomorrow, Victoria whispered. Please. We'll proceed as scheduled, I finished. And Victoria, don't be late. Unlike tonight, arriving early won't help you. Emma stepped forward, her graduation robe swishing softly. Dad, I think you and Victoria should leave. This is my celebration, and I'd like to enjoy it with people who actually support me. As security quietly escorted them out, Dr. Harrison raised his glass. To Emma Mitchell, summa cum laude graduate, and to Catherine Mitchell, whose generosity will fund our new business school wing. The guests applauded, and Emma hugged me tight. Mom, why didn't you ever tell me? I kissed her forehead. Because I wanted you to learn the same lesson I did. Success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. And Victoria, we'll learn that lesson tomorrow. I smiled, taking 2 champagne glasses from a passing waiter. But tonight is about you, my brilliant daughter. Though I have to ask. What? How long have you known about Mitchell Global? Emma grinned. Since I interned at Riverside last summer. Victoria never noticed I had full security clearance. I laughed, raising my glass. That's my girl. Monday morning arrived with a tension that could be cut with a knife. I sat in my office at the university's main administration building, watching through the security feed as Victoria paced nervously outside the Board of Trustees' emergency meeting room. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Mom, Dad just arrived. He looks like he hasn't slept. Stay in class, sweetheart, I replied. Let me handle this. The board members filed in one by one, each nodding respectfully in my direction. After all, my $50 million donation to the university's expansion project had earned me more than just a seat among them. It had made me the chairperson. Send them in, I instructed my assistant. Victoria entered first, her designer suit a stark contrast to her disheveled appearance. James followed, looking like he aged a decade since Saturday's disaster. Please sit, I gestured to the chairs. I believe we have some matters to discuss regarding Saturday's incident. Sarah, I can explain, Victoria started. Explain what? I cut her off smoothly. How you crashed a private graduation celebration? How you distributed photos of me working as a janitor 15 years ago? Or perhaps how you announced to everyone that Emma's mother was, quote, nothing but a cleaning lady who slept her way into a degree. James winced. Sarah, she was drunk. Being drunk doesn't excuse attempting to humiliate my daughter on her graduation day. I replied coldly, but let's discuss your sobriety, Victoria, since you're so fond of exposing truths. I pressed a button, and the room's screens displayed security footage from various university events. Victoria, clearly intoxicated, making scenes at donor dinners. Victoria, harassing student assistants. Victoria, threatening to have professors fired because they wouldn't change her son's grades. As the university's ethics committee chair, I continued, I've been collecting these incidents for months, but I held back, hoping you'd seek help. Victoria's face drained of color. You're the chair. Among other things. I slid forward a document. Did you ever wonder who bought out your father's failing company last year? The silent investor who saved your family's fortune. Her hands trembled as she reached for the paper. The Morrison Group? That's you. The same group that owns the rehab facility you'll be checking into this afternoon. What? She looked up sharply. You can't force me. Actually, I can. Your employment contract with the university includes a morality clause. You either enter treatment or you lose your position. Your choice. James finally found his voice. Sarah, when did you become all this? I was always this, James. You were just too busy being embarrassed by my humble beginnings to notice. I turned back to Victoria. Remember how you mocked me for cleaning offices at night while studying? Those offices belong to the business empire I now control. Victoria's perfectly lined lips quivered. The photos, I thought they would hurt you. They did hurt someone, your stepchild. Emma had to watch you try to shame her mother for working honest jobs to earn an education. I leaned forward. Do you know what she did after you left? She helped clean up the mess you made. Because that's what strong people do. They don't fear honest work. The door opened and the dean entered with a thick folder. Mrs. Kennedy, the board has reviewed the evidence. We're prepared to vote on Mrs. Harrison's employment status. No need, Victoria whispered, tears streaming down her face. I'll go to rehab. Please don't let my son find out like this. I studied her for a moment. Your son already knows. He came to my office this morning worried about you. He's waiting at the facility. He is. Yes. Because unlike you, he understands that there's no shame in getting help. I handed her a tissue. The car is waiting downstairs. Your father knows, and he supports this decision. As Victoria gathered her things, James remained seated. I should have defended Emma at the party. Yes, you should have. But you can start making better choices now. After Victoria left with the facility escort, James turned to me. All these years you let me think. I let you think what you wanted to think. Your assumptions about my worth were your problem, not mine. My phone buzzed again. Emma sending a photo of her new research grant approval. The grant I'd anonymously funded through my foundation, which she earned entirely on merit. The board meeting is adjourned, I announced. And James? Emma's celebration dinner is tonight. This time, come alone. As the room cleared out, I looked at the old photo Victoria had tried to use against me. Young Sarah in a janitor's uniform, studying between cleaning shifts. I pinned it to my bulletin board right next to Emma's graduation photo. Mrs. Kennedy, my assistant, appeared. Your daughter's here. Emma entered, still in her lab coat from her research assistant position. Mom, is everything okay? I hugged her tight. Everything's perfect. Victoria's getting the help she needs, and you're still my brilliant, compassionate daughter who doesn't look down on honest work. Well, she grinned, I learned from the best. Should we frame that photo Victoria found? Put it right next to your Forbes cover? I laughed, holding my daughter close. Sometimes the best revenge isn't in destroying someone's world, it's in helping them build a better one. 3 months later, I sat in my office overlooking the university campus, reviewing the latest reports from the rehabilitation center. Victoria had completed her initial program and was now actively participating in outpatient therapy. Her progress reports showed genuine effort at change. A knock on my door interrupted my reading. Come in. Emma entered, carrying 2 coffee cups. Thought you might need this. I just saw Victoria at the student counseling center. Oh, I accepted the coffee, noting my daughter's thoughtful expression. She's volunteering there, talking to students about substance abuse and pressure. Emma sat down. She looks different. More real somehow. I nodded, thinking of the handwritten letter Victoria had sent me last week, full of genuine remorse and gratitude. Sometimes people need to hit bottom before they can rebuild. Like Dad? Emma raised an eyebrow. James had been making his own kind of progress. Weekly dinners with Emma, no more social climbing, and he even started teaching pro bono at the community college. Speaking of rebuilding, I pulled out a folder. The board approved your research proposal. Emma's eyes lit up. Really? But I thought the funding came from an anonymous donor? I smiled. One who believes in supporting scientists based on merit, not social connections. Mom, she laughed. Is there anything you don't secretly own or fund? My pride in you, I replied softly. That's always been right out in the open. Another knock, and my assistant appeared. Mrs. Kennedy, Victoria's here for her scheduled meeting. I watched emotions flash across Emma's face, concern, curiosity, and finally understanding. Want me to stay? No, sweetheart. Some conversations need to happen one-on-one. Victoria entered as Emma left, looking vastly different from the woman who had crashed the graduation party. Gone were the flashy designer clothes and artificial polish. Instead, she wore simple business attire and a humble expression. Catherine, she said quietly, thank you for seeing me. Your progress reports are impressive, I gestured to the chair. The counseling center speaks highly of your volunteer work. It's helping me as much as them. She sat down, hands folded neatly. I never apologized properly for everything. No, you didn't. I was so consumed with proving my worth through status and appearances, she continued. Seeing you succeed without all that. It threatened everything I believed about myself. I studied her carefully, and now I'm learning that real strength isn't in tearing others down. It's in building yourself up honestly. She pulled out a familiar envelope. I kept these photos as a reminder. The same photos she tried to use against me at the graduation party now lay between us. But their power had changed. You know, I said, picking up one. This was taken the night I finalized my first business plan. Between cleaning offices, I was building the foundation of Mitchell Global. While I was busy buying designer clothes to look successful, you were actually becoming successful. Victoria smiled sadly. The irony isn't lost on me. My phone buzzed, a message from Emma. Dad's teaching his first community college class tonight. Think we should surprise him? Second chances are valuable things, I told Victoria. What matters is what we do with them. She nodded, standing to leave. Catherine? Thank you. Not for saving my career or forcing me into rehab, but for showing me there's another way to live. After she left, I texted Emma back. Meet me in 20 minutes. Let's go support your father's new beginning. Looking out over the campus, I could see students rushing to classes, each carrying their own dreams and struggles. Somewhere out there, Victoria was counseling someone who needed help. James was preparing to teach his first class. And Emma was continuing her research, earned through merit rather than connections. My phone buzzed one last time, a photo from Victoria. She was at Riley's diner, sitting in the same booth where my old waitressing photo had been taken. Her message read, sometimes the best view is from the bottom, looking up. I smiled, remembering the frightened young mother who had once cleaned offices at night, dreaming of a better future. Now that future included not just success, but the power to help others find their way. Ready, Mom? Emma appeared at my door, car keys in hand. Ready, I said, gathering my things. Let's go watch your father learn what real success looks like. Because sometimes the greatest victory isn't in winning the battle, it's in helping everyone find peace. The wedding reception buzzed with elegance at the downtown art museum. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the marble floors where my stepdaughter Sarah danced with her new husband. I adjusted my conservative navy dress, the same one I wore under my judicial robes, and watched my husband Thomas beam with pride. That's when I noticed his ex-wife, Patricia, wobbling toward the microphone, champagne glass in hand. The wedding planner's eyes widened in alarm. We hadn't scheduled any more speeches. Testing, testing, Patricia's voice echoed through the hall. The string quartet stopped playing. I know I wasn't asked to make a toast, but as Sarah's real mother, I have some wisdom to share. Thomas tensed beside me. Diana, I'm so sorry. I should stop her. I placed my hand on his arm. Let her speak. This could be interesting. Patricia smoothed her too-tight designer dress, clearly bought for a woman half her age. My darling Sarah, Watching you marry today brings back memories of my own marriages. Some happy, some. She shot me a venomous look, tainted by home-wrecking gold diggers. A collective gasp rippled through the guests. Sarah's face flushed with embarrassment. Her new husband pulled her closer. You see, sweetheart, some women will do anything for money. They'll pretend to be all proper and professional. Patricia's words slurred slightly. They'll even become judges to seem respectable. But deep down, they're just hunting for wealthy men. If only she knew that my judicial salary far exceeded Thomas's professor income. But I kept my face neutral, the same expression I wore on the bench. Take your current stepmother, for example. Patricia gestured wildly toward me, sloshing champagne. She may act all dignified now, but she swooped in the moment your father and I had problems. Probably planned it all along. Actually, I met Thomas 2 years after their divorce, at a legal education conference where we were both speakers. But Patricia preferred her own version of history. So remember, darling, watch out for women like her. Women who hide behind fancy careers while plotting to steal husbands. Thomas started to stand, but I squeezed his hand. The room had grown uncomfortably quiet except for Patricia's voice and the clicking of phone cameras. Tomorrow's legal community gossip would be interesting. At least I'm honest about who I am, Patricia continued. Speaking of honesty, did your father tell you he's my 4th husband, or that I'm in the middle of divorcing number 5? She laughed. But don't worry, Richard's loaded. I'll get a fortune in the settlement. I bit back a smile. Patricia had no idea I'd been assigned to her divorce case just yesterday. Her soon-to-be ex, Richard, had ironclad prenuptial agreements and her claims of hidden assets were looking increasingly dubious. Mrs. Harrison, the wedding planner, finally approached Patricia. Perhaps we should let the band resume. Don't interrupt me, Patricia snapped. I'm giving motherly advice here. Sarah needs to know how some women operate, like the judge who thinks she's too good for our social circle, who probably married Thomas for his family connections. Thomas's family was indeed well connected to the local food bank where they volunteered. I'd grown up in a wealthy family myself, but Patricia had never bothered to learn my background. You know what I heard? Patricia's voice turned conspiratorial. Little Miss Perfect Judge used to be a waitress in law school, probably where she learned to hunt for rich men. Actually, I'd owned the restaurant, using my trust fund to help put myself through law school. But again, Patricia preferred her assumptions. Sarah finally broke away from her husband and approached the microphone. Mom, that's enough. You're embarrassing yourself. I'm trying to protect you. These career women who marry divorced men, they're all the same. Gold diggers in judges' robes. The wedding planner gestured to security. 2 discreet men in suits started moving toward Patricia. Fine. Patricia raised her glass. To the happy couple, and to their gold-digging stepmother. Hope you're enjoying my leftovers, Your Honor. As security escorted her out, I maintained my composed expression. The same one I'd wear tomorrow when Patricia entered my courtroom, unaware that her drunken speech had been witnessed by the judge handling her divorce. Mom, I'm so sorry, Sarah hugged me, tears in her eyes. I should have known she'd do something like this. It's fine, sweetheart. I smoothed her hair. Nothing can ruin your beautiful day. Thomas looked devastated. Diana, what she said about you is about to become very relevant to her divorce case. I smiled slightly, especially the part about Richard being loaded and her expecting a fortune in the settlement. Sarah's eyes widened. Wait, are you handling her divorce? As of yesterday, she doesn't know yet. I checked my watch. Her hearing is at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Should be interesting when she realizes who's behind the bench. Oh my God, Sarah started laughing. That's perfect. Indeed, I straightened my pearls. Now shall we get back to celebrating your wedding? I believe your father owes me a dance. As Thomas led me to the dance floor, the string quartet resumed playing. Guests gradually returned to celebrating, though I noticed plenty of phones still recording. No doubt the legal community would be buzzing tomorrow. You're taking this remarkably well, Thomas murmured as we danced. Let's just say Karma sometimes wears a black robe. I smiled. Now, should we tell her about buying her favorite country club next month, or save that surprise for another day? The night continued beautifully after Patricia's exit. Sarah and her husband shared their first dance, cut the cake, and celebrated with loved ones. But I couldn't help anticipating tomorrow's hearing. Patricia's face when she saw me on the bench would be priceless. Sometimes the best revenge isn't responding to insults, it's simply letting karma unfold in its own perfect time. Especially when karma comes with a gavel. 9 and sharp. I adjusted my black robes and entered the courtroom through the judge's chambers, my heels clicking against the polished floor. The bailiff called out, "All rise," as I took my seat at the bench, maintaining the same neutral expression I perfected over years of proceedings. Case number 2025-4872, Richard Harrison versus Patricia Harrison, dissolution of marriage hearing, my clerk announced. I glanced up to see Patricia strutting in, clearly nursing a hangover behind oversized designer sunglasses. She wore another inappropriately tight dress, this time in courthouse inappropriate red. Her attorney, James Morton, whispered something urgently in her ear, probably advising her to remove the sunglasses indoors. "Good morning, Your Honor," Morton began, then froze mid-sentence as Patricia finally removed her sunglasses and saw who sat on the bench. The color drained from her face. "You," Patricia's voice cracked. "You can't be the judge. This is a conflict of interest." "Mrs. Harrison," I spoke calmly, "any objections to the court's jurisdiction should be properly filed through your counsel." "But you're my ex-husband's wife." She turned to her lawyer. "Do something." Morton looked deeply uncomfortable. "Your Honor, given the circumstances from last evening's event, perhaps we should discuss recusal." "Counselor, are you referring to your client's unauthorized speech at my stepdaughter's wedding? The one where she publicly discussed this very case, claiming, and I quote, 'Richard's loaded, I'll get a fortune in the settlement.'" Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Several attorneys in the gallery tried to hide their smirks. Word of her wedding performance had clearly spread through the legal community. "Those statements," I continued, "along with her accusations about my character, have been preserved on numerous phones and security cameras. Would you like them entered into evidence?" "And no, Your Honor." Morton tugged at his collar. "However, given the personal nature of your client's choice to publicly discuss her divorce strategy at a family wedding?" "Yes, let's address that." I picked up a document. "I have here your motion claiming Mr. Harrison is hiding assets. Interesting timing, given Mrs. Harrison's statement about expecting a fortune." Richard's attorney sat back, clearly enjoying the show. Patricia's fake tan had taken on a greenish tinge. "Furthermore," I continued, "I've reviewed the prenuptial agreement. It appears quite solid, signed with independent counsel, all assets clearly disclosed. Mrs. Harrison agreed to its terms. What was it, 14 months ago?" 13 months and 20 days, Richard's attorney supplied helpfully. "A remarkably short marriage," I noted. "Your fifth, I believe you mentioned last night, Mrs. Harrison." Patricia gripped the table. "This isn't fair. You're biased against me." "Actually," I said, lifting another document, "I was prepared to recuse myself this morning. However, your public statements about this case, combined with your unfounded accusations about my professional integrity, make me question whether you're simply judge shopping." Morton was now frantically scribbling notes. "Your Honor, perhaps we could request a brief recess." "Granted." 20 minutes. I stood. "Counselors, my chambers." "Mrs. Harrison, I suggest you use this time to consider your position carefully." "In my chambers." Morton looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. "Your Honor, my client's behavior was unfortunate." "Unfortunate?" Richard's attorney scoffed. "She publicly admitted to marrying for money and expecting to break a prenup. At her daughter's wedding, no less. A wedding where she was clearly intoxicated," I noted, "which raises concerns about her judgment. Now, gentlemen, let's discuss realistic options." 20 minutes later, we returned to the courtroom. Patricia had reapplied her makeup but couldn't hide her nervous fidgeting. "Mrs. Harrison," I addressed her directly, "your counsel has indicated you'd like to make a statement." She stood, hands shaking slightly. "Your Honor, I apologize for my behavior last night. I was emotional about my daughter's wedding." "Emotional enough to admit your marriage was financially motivated." She glanced at her lawyer. "I misspoke." "Indeed, just as you misspoke about my character and profession." Patricia's carefully applied foundation couldn't hide her flush. "I was wrong to make those accusations. Wrong legally or wrong factually." I raised an eyebrow. "Because defaming a sitting judge." "Both," she burst out. "I was wrong. About everything. I don't actually have evidence of hidden assets, and the prenup is valid." So you're withdrawing your motion? Morgan stood. Yes, Your Honor. Furthermore, my client is prepared to accept the prenuptial terms as written. Very well. I made a note. Given these developments, does either party object to my continuing to preside over this matter? Both attorneys shook their heads. Patricia stared at the floor. Excellent. Then we'll proceed with the dissolution according to the prenuptial agreement's terms. Unless, I glanced at Patricia, you'd like to make any other public statements about your financial expectations. No, Your Honor, she whispered. Wonderful. Then we'll set the final hearing for next month. And Mrs. Harrison. I waited until she met my eyes. I suggest you avoid any further public commentary about this case or about my qualifications to hear it. Clear? She nodded quickly. Court is adjourned. I stood gathering my papers. Oh, and Mrs. Harrison, do remember to dress appropriately for your next appearance. This isn't a nightclub. As I exited through my chambers, I heard Patricia burst into tears. Perhaps she was finally learning that actions and words have consequences, especially when directed at the wrong judge. A month later, I sat in my home office reviewing the final divorce decree. The morning sun streamed through the windows of our historic townhouse, the one Patricia had once sneered at as quaint compared to her mansion. The mansion she now had to sell, according to the prenup's terms. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Mom, you have to see this. Check your email. I opened my inbox to find a forwarded society column. There, in glossy digital print, was Patricia's latest humiliation. Local socialite downsizes. Patricia Harrison, known for her lavish lifestyle and recent courthouse drama, was spotted apartment hunting on the unfashionable East Side. Sources say her fifth divorce didn't yield the fortune she publicly predicted at her daughter's wedding last month, particularly after her ill-advised comments to the presiding judge, who happened to be her ex-husband's new wife. Sometimes karma comes in black robes. The doorbell rang. To my surprise, Patricia stood on my doorstep, looking decidedly less polished than usual. Her designer clothes had been replaced by simple slacks and a blouse. Can we talk? She asked quietly. Please? I considered sending her away, but curiosity won out. Come in. She perched awkwardly on my living room sofa, taking in the antique furniture and art collection she'd never bothered to notice before. I had no idea, she said finally, about any of it. Your family's foundation, your business successes before becoming a judge. Sarah told me everything. Does it matter? I poured myself tea, deliberately not offering her any. Would you have treated me differently if you'd known I came from money? That's what I'm trying to say. She twisted her hands. I wouldn't have, because I was the real gold digger all along. 5 marriages, always looking for more money, better status. And now? Now I'm selling the mansion, moving into a 2-bedroom apartment, and she swallowed hard, taking a job as a receptionist at a law firm. I bit back a smile. The universe had a poetic sense of justice. Sarah says you're helping her start a nonprofit, Patricia continued, teaching financial literacy to women leaving bad marriages. I wonder if I could volunteer. I studied her face, searching for signs of manipulation. Found none. You'd have to start at the bottom, I said. Filing papers, making coffee, learning humility. I know, she straightened her spine. I need to learn who I am without designer labels and rich husbands. Sarah says you did that, worked your way up while getting your law degree, even though you had family money. Because true worth isn't about what you have. I set down my teacup. It's about what you build, what you contribute. Will you help me? Her voice was small. Not for my sake, but for Sarah's. She deserves better than a mother who measures everything by dollar signs. I thought about karma, about justice, about redemption. The nonprofit opens next month. Be there at 8 a.m. sharp. Dress professionally but modestly. And Patricia? I met her eyes. No more speeches about gold diggers. She actually laughed, though it was shaky. God, I was awful. You could have destroyed me in court after what I said. I didn't need to. You did that yourself. I stood, indicating our conversation was over. 8 a.m., business casual. Don't be late. After she left, I called Sarah. Your mother just visited. I know. She called me crying yesterday after reading about her downsizing in the society pages. Asked me to tell her everything about you, about why you became a judge. I think she finally gets it. We'll see. I smiled. But speaking of property, how would you feel about using your mother's old mansion for the nonprofit's headquarters? I hear it's coming on the market at a very reasonable price. Sarah's laughter echoed through the phone. Mom, you're brilliant, making her work in the building she used to own. Sometimes the best lessons require a dose of humility. I glanced at the society pages again. And sometimes justice wears designer labels after all. Love you, Mom. Love you too, sweetheart. Now, shall we discuss the renovation plans for the mansion? I'm thinking the grand ballroom would make an excellent classroom for financial literacy. As I hung up, I couldn't help but smile. Patricia would soon learn that true power isn't about marrying money. It's about earning respect. One coffee run at a time. The university auditorium buzzed with excitement as graduating seniors filed into their seats. I smoothed my designer blazer, the one I wore to close my biggest real estate deals, and watched my stepson James adjust his cap and gown in the front row. He looked so handsome, my husband Robert whispered, squeezing my hand. Thank you for making this happen, Sarah. I smiled, thinking of the scholarship recommendation letters I'd written through my connections as the city's top luxury real estate broker. Not that his mother Margaret knew about my influence, she was too busy taking credit for his success. Speaking of Margaret, I spotted her trademark platinum blonde hair several rows ahead, wearing a dress that cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. The same mortgage she was about to default on, though she didn't know that yet. Oh look, the trophy wife showed up, Margaret's voice carried deliberately across 3 rows, probably to show off another designer outfit bought with my alimony. I bit back a laugh. My commission from selling just one luxury property exceeded her annual alimony, but Margaret preferred her narrative of me as the young gold digger who'd stolen her husband. The ceremony began with James's name among the first called due to his honors status. As he crossed the stage, I stood to take photos, accidentally blocking Margaret's view. Sit down, she hissed. I'm trying to watch my son graduate. Our son, I corrected quietly, continuing to snap pictures. That did it. Margaret shot up from her seat, face flushed with rage. How dare you? You've been his stepmother for what, 3 years? I carried him for 9 months. People around us started turning to stare. Robert touched my arm. Sarah, maybe we should. No, I stood my ground. I have every right to celebrate James's achievement. Achievement? Margaret laughed bitterly. Please, he succeeded because of my parenting, my sacrifices. Like keeping the family mansion so he'd have stability. The mansion she could no longer afford, thanks to her shopaholic tendencies. The one I'd be showing to buyers tomorrow. The mansion you're about to lose? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Margaret's eyes widened. Then, before anyone could react, her hand whipped across my face with a crack that echoed through the auditorium. You gold-digging bitch, she snarled. You'll never be his real mother. And that house, that will always be our family home, mine and Robert's, not yours. My cheeks stung, but I maintained my professional smile, the same one I used when closing multi-million-dollar deals. We'll see about that. Security, someone called. Several university officers started moving toward us. Don't bother, Margaret grabbed her designer purse. I'm leaving, but this isn't over, little Miss Real Estate Agent. You may have stolen my husband, but you'll never take my home. As she stormed out, I touched my throbbing cheek and felt the thick envelope in my blazer pocket. Inside was the official notice. Margaret had defaulted on her mortgage, and the bank had appointed me as the listing agent. By this time tomorrow, I'd be showing her beloved mansion to qualified buyers. Mom. James had left his seat to check on me. Are you okay? I saw what happened. I'm fine, sweetheart. I hugged him tight. Nothing can ruin your special day. Robert looked devastated. Sarah, I'm so sorry. Margaret's always been volatile. But this is about to backfire spectacularly. I finished, pulling out my phone to check tomorrow's showing schedule. Trust me. What do you mean? James asked. I smiled mysteriously. Let's just say your mother's about to learn a valuable lesson about karma and property rights. The ceremony resumed, though I noticed plenty of phones still pointed our way. No doubt the video of Margaret's assault would be circulating soon. Perfect timing, actually, it would make tomorrow's revelation even sweeter. You're taking this remarkably well, Robert whispered as James returned to his seat. Because I know something she doesn't. I straightened my blazer. That mansion she's so proud of, the one she got in your divorce, it goes on the market tomorrow morning. What? But how? She defaulted on the mortgage 3 months ago. The bank appointed me as the listing agent last week. I touched my stinging cheek. Sometimes revenge doesn't need to be planned. Sometimes it just needs a real estate license. The rest of the graduation proceeded beautifully. James received his diploma with honors. We took family photos and celebrated his achievement. But I couldn't help anticipating tomorrow's open house. Margaret's face when she saw me standing in her foyer with prospective buyers would be priceless. Sometimes the best revenge isn't responding to a slap. It's simply waiting for karma to unfold in its own perfect time, especially when karma comes with a for sale sign. I arrived at Margaret's mansion precisely at 9 a.m., my heels clicking on the marble foyer she'd bragged about for years. The security code still worked. The bank had made sure of that when they gave me the listing. Methodically, I began preparing for the open house, setting out my luxury marketing materials and turning on all the lights to highlight the grand staircase. The house was a mess. Designer clothes strewn everywhere, empty wine bottles on costly antique tables. Clearly, Margaret hadn't expected anyone to enter her sanctuary. I'd given my assistant specific instructions not to inform her about today's showing. Some surprises were worth waiting for. At 10:30 a.m., right on schedule, I heard the distinctive roar of Margaret's sports car pulling into the circular driveway. Perfect timing. The serious buyers would arrive at 11. "What the hell are you doing in my house?" Margaret burst through the front door, still wearing yesterday's makeup. "I'm calling the police." "Good morning, Margaret." I handed her my business card with the bank's authorization letter. "I'm here in my professional capacity as the listing agent for this property." She snatched the papers, her face shifting from confusion to rage as she read. "This is a mistake. The bank can't sell my house." "Actually, they can. 3 months of missed payments, remember? Plus that little scene you caused at graduation yesterday. Not a good look for someone trying to keep their luxury home." "You?" Her hands shook. "You planned this." "The bank chose me because I'm the top luxury real estate agent in the city. Your assault yesterday just made the timing more poetic." The doorbell rang. Margaret spun around to see a wealthy-looking couple peering through the glass doors. "You can't show my house. I haven't even packed. The bank's authorization gives me full access." I moved to open the door. "You're welcome to stay for the showing, but I should warn you, that video of you slapping me is trending on social media. Might want to keep a low profile." "Welcome to Oakwood Estate." I greeted the buyers warmly. "Please excuse the current owner. She was just leaving." "Like hell I am." Margaret grabbed a crystal vase. "This is my house." "Was your house," I corrected calmly, noting how the buyers stepped back nervously. "And that Waterford crystal you're holding? Listed in the bank's inventory. Destroying it would be vandalism." Margaret's mascara-streaked face crumpled. "Robert gave me this house in the divorce, and he mortgaged it to the hilt for designer clothes and spa trips." I gestured to the shopping bags littering the floor. "Now shall I continue the showing, or would you prefer the police explain property laws?" The buyers whispered to each other, clearly entertained by the drama. Margaret must have realized she was only hurting herself because she dropped the vase back onto the table. "This isn't over," she hissed, grabbing her purse. "I'll fight this." "With what money?" I asked sweetly. "Now, let me show you the grand ballroom. It's perfect for entertaining." Throughout the next hour, I conducted a flawless showing while Margaret sat in her car, alternating between crying and making angry phone calls. 3 more groups of buyers arrived, all suitably impressed by the property, if not by the mascara-stained woman having a meltdown in the driveway. "The master suite features a spa-like bathroom," I was saying when Margaret burst back in. "Nobody's buying my house." She looked wild-eyed. "I just called Robert. He'll stop this." "Actually," I checked my phone. "Your son James just made an offer. Full asking price." That stopped her cold. "What?" "Remember that trust fund you never knew about? The one his grandparents set up. He's using it to buy his childhood home." I smiled. "He's planning to turn it into a boutique hotel. Rather poetic, don't you think?" Margaret sank onto the stairs, her designer dress catching on the rough wood. "James wouldn't. After yesterday's scene, he absolutely would. In fact, I showed her my phone screen, displaying James's message. Do it, Mom. Time for some changes. But where am I supposed to go? I hear there are some lovely apartments on the east side. I turned back to the buyers. Now about those crown moldings. Margaret finally stumbled out, mascara streaming down her face. Through the windows, I watched her sports car speed away, likely toward another wine bar to drown her sorrows. Quite a show, one of the buyers commented. Indeed, I straightened my blazer. Now let's discuss the property's investment potential. The hotel market in this area is quite underserved. By day's end, I had 3 backup offers in addition to James's. As I locked up, I touched my cheek where Margaret had slapped me. The sting had faded, replaced by the sweet satisfaction of karma well served. My phone buzzed with a text from James. Really doing this? Converting Mom's precious mansion into a hotel? Only if you're sure, I replied. After what she did to you? Absolutely. Time she learned money can't buy class. I smiled, taking one last look at the house Margaret had lorded over me for years. Tomorrow we'd start the paperwork to transfer her precious mansion to her son, the one person she couldn't legally fight. Sometimes revenge doesn't need to be dramatic. Sometimes it just needs good timing, a real estate license, and a stepson with excellent investment instincts. 6 months later, I stood in the transformed grand foyer of what was now the Heritage Hotel. The marble floors Margaret had once bragged about now gleamed beneath elegant hotel guests instead of her scattered shopping bags. James had turned his childhood home into the city's most exclusive boutique hotel, complete with a 5-star restaurant where the kitchen used to be. Mrs. Cooper. A staff member approached. There's a situation at reception. I already knew what, or rather, who, it would be. Margaret stood at the front desk, swaying slightly, her designer clothes noticeably from last season's collection. This is my house, she was saying to the startled receptionist. I raised my son here. And now your son owns it, I said smoothly, approaching the desk. Can I help you, Margaret? She spun around, nearly losing her balance. You did this to me. I'm living in a 2-bedroom apartment while you turn my home into a successful business. I raised an eyebrow, one that's fully booked 6 months in advance. I want to book a room, she declared suddenly. I have the right to stay in my own house. I checked the reservation system on my tablet. We do have a suite available. That will be $1,200 per night, plus a security deposit. Margaret's face fell. We both knew she couldn't afford it. Her alimony barely covered her rent now. Perhaps the lobby bar, I suggested kindly. We serve excellent martinis. Mom. James appeared from his office, dressed in a sharp business suit. Is everything okay? Jamie. Margaret rushed to hug him, but he stepped back. It's James, he corrected. And if you're here to make a scene again, please don't. We have guests. She looked around helplessly at the transformed space. This was our home. Was James agreed? Now it's something better. Something that actually brings value to people instead of just showing off wealth. A wealthy couple walked past, heading to the renowned restaurant that used to be Margaret's showcase kitchen. She watched them longingly, remembering when she was the one making grand entrances. I heard you're working as a sales clerk now, James said, not unkindly. How's that going? Margaret's shoulders slumped. It's humbling. 20 hours a week at the mall. In a store where I used to spend thousands. I felt a twinge of sympathy. There's an opening for an events coordinator here, I found myself saying. Someone to handle wedding bookings, social functions. If you're interested. Both James and Margaret looked at me in surprise. You'd give me a job? Margaret asked suspiciously. After everything. Consider it a chance to be part of your son's success instead of resenting it. I handed her a business card. The interview's Tuesday at 9 a.m. Wear something professional, not designer. And Margaret? I touched my cheek where she'd slapped me. No more dramatic scenes. She clutched the card like a lifeline. I'll be there. After she left, James turned to me. You're really giving her a chance. Sometimes the best revenge is showing someone a better way to live. I straightened a fresh flower arrangement in the lobby. Besides, she does know how to throw a party. Might as well put that skill to good use. You're a better person than she deserves. James hugged me. Maybe, I smiled. Or maybe I just understand that true success isn't about owning a mansion. It's about building something meaningful. Something she'll learn as she takes the job. That evening, as I watched the sunset paint the hotel's windows gold, I received a text from Margaret. "Thank you for the opportunity. I'll be there Tuesday, and I'm sorry about the slap." I showed it to Robert over dinner in our hotel restaurant. He shook his head in amazement. "You're really giving her a second chance." "No," I corrected, sipping my wine. "I'm giving her something better, a chance to earn her own success instead of taking from others." Besides, I gestured to the packed dining room, watching her coordinate weddings in the house she lost. That's a special kind of karma. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about showing them a better version of themselves, even if that lesson comes with a uniform and a name tag.